Well, it's hard to disagree with the most common view, which is that there's relatively little to hope for in terms of short-term strong recovery in developed markets. I'm talking about Europe and the United States. The United States going a little bit okay, but not great, not a lot of growth. And Europe, the issues are deep. Politicians are working on it. They're taking their time. The issues are in fact very difficult, so it's really hard to see growth picking up quickly there, and it's extremely tame, as you know. I think anything above zero is a good score in that situation. I think developing markets have significantly more potential, certainly in the short term, but more generally speaking, growth is coming from developing markets more than from developed markets now. The key to me is how developing markets will manage to, realize that they can make the growth themselves. In fact, it's their destiny to do so, and how they will develop strategies that are increasingly less dependent on developed markets. And of course, in terms of the dynamics of growth, that's not so much of an issue because of the market size of significant developing economies like China and India, most, but also Brazil. The key is on the financing side, because the developed economies still play a very important role in terms of the financing flows of the financial markets. And I think there is a lot of work to be done. On the one hand, international investment is very important, foreign investment is very important, but the real issue when you want to grow is not what kind of investment you get, but the fact that you need as much investment as you can get. So deepening domestic and regional capital markets, I think, is a really important agenda for many developing countries, advanced ones especially. India is an excellent example. India has significant resource. I still remember that I think it was 10, 15 years ago, the steel industry in my country was bought, I think it was by Mr. Mittal, but I forget. And now when I go to a place where it used to be called Hoogovens, now it's called Tata Steel. I was there actually last week. So India obviously has strength. But the key is really to get the same kind of depth and sophistication in financial markets in markets like India, so that we maximize the potential first and foremost of domestic capital, because it will always be bigger than foreign capital, and it flows in the same ways. Domestic investors have alternatives. I just mentioned Tata Steel in Holland. So they react to the same kind of incentives. They have the same alternatives. They can put their money outside of India, inside India. Same is true for China, Brazil. I think the key is to make sure that the full suite of financial instruments is available, and that it is in fact an attractive proposition for domestic investors as well as international ones to invest in the market that will generate the growth, which is the BRICS markets essentially. I think it's important to send signals to foreign investors that it's a good idea to invest in India. My own view would be that if you're a global player and you think about where you're going to put your money and you have a 10-year horizon, then it would be very difficult to imagine a business strategy that did not involve putting money in India, because it's one of the great markets in the world already, and it will be only greater. I think I don't really know to what extent this is true, because I'm a newcomer and I'm reading the papers and I'm getting acquainted with the debate. I hear relatively little about what I think will drive growth, which is in domestic investment and domestic investments from smaller and medium-sized companies. And that can be up to 50. It's not necessarily the mom and pop store around the corner. It can be significant sort of little manufacturing enterprises, things like that. These are the enterprises that create jobs across the world. And creating a sentiment that drives that kind of investment has much more growth potential than attracting foreign institutional investors, no matter how important the foreign institutional investors are. I'm not dismissing them. I think more of the debate should be about the domestic investor and not necessarily the very huge ones. We're actually thinking about the new country strategy, and it's a great thing to do just coming in. So we're going through a process where we're brainstorming with the team. It's very important for me to draw on the team rather than tell the team what to do, because the team knows more, but of course I can bring a fresh perspective as an outsider, so we're working along those lines. I think that the big challenge, first of all, the World Bank's money for India is the biggest amount we have for any country in the world, but a small amount relative to the economy and the budget of India. Everybody knows that. But it's important to not make the mistake of thinking any problem that India has, the bank has to work on, because the bank may or may not have the scope or the expertise to work on it. I think that's the first question. Can we actually be helpful? Do we have knowledge? Is there a way to leverage our knowledge with money? And are we welcome? Because the bank has a brand name that some people like, not all people like. So sometimes it's really good to have World Bank advice. Sometimes people really dislike it. It can even be counterproductive. So we have to be smart about that. Our main comparative advantage is that we have worked in almost every country in the world that including the ones that went through the same phase that India currently is in, and that got ahead of that phase and progressed. So even if those countries were different, they struggled with the same issues that India is struggling with today, and sharing that experience may be helpful.